Hello, classmates. For my project, I decided to choose the film Bones and All, which is a favorite film of mine. Bones and All is directed by Luca Guadagnino, and now it was released worldwide September 2nd, 2022. This film can be considered either as a romantic horror or coming to age drama, just depending on how you interpret the movie. I would say I would consider it a romantic horror, especially with the way that I'm going to interpret it later on. The setting changes throughout since there's a lot of traveling, but I will say it was mainly located in Midwestern America in the 1980s. The main characters are Marin Yearly, who is played by Taylor Russell, Marin actually, sorry, and Lee, who is played by Timothy Chalamet, and lastly, Sully, played by Mark Rylance. There's a couple of other characters, but I wouldn't say that they made such a huge impact as these three. For my claim, evidence, and reasoning. For my claim, in the film Bones and All, it shows that real love means accepting someone fully, even with the darkest sides of them. For the evidence, I would say that Lee chooses to stay with Marin, even though she has very violent urges to eat people, while Marin also chooses to stay with Lee, even though he has a very dark past of making mistakes. The reasoning behind this is the evidence supports the claim since they both are characters willingly opening up to each other, which puts them in vulnerable positions. They are both living very dangerous lives, and their love clearly isn't perfect. The message behind the term Bones and All shows how they are able to accept each other and love unconditionally. I think throughout you'll understand that this film has a very dark side to it, and they both are eaters, which causes them to eat other people, which is, a little weird, but it shows like a deeper meaning that even though they have this like weirdness about them, they still love each other for who they are. So, for Ordinary World, as I said before, the location varies throughout the Midwest of America. In the beginning of the film, Marin lives with her father, and the mother isn't in the picture. Marin actually knows nothing about her because the father refuses to say anything about her. They have traveled from city to city to stay out of trouble. This is when Marin tends to feel very isolated and like she doesn't belong in certain situations because of the urges to eat other people that she has. This is what forces them to move so often because if Marin tends to make a mistake of, causing a situation with someone, then they have to get out of the town as fast as they can. It was later on said that they don't have the same last name ever and that they constantly are changing their last names. So the call to adventure. Marin's call to adventure is when her father abandons her on the day that she turns 18. He only leaves her with some cash and a tape that tells her about her past. Marin takes the tape and cash and then decides to travel in search of her mother. She wants to find her in hope of being able to escape herself and her eater habits because she wants to just be able to learn more about it because in the tapes her father said that her mother does understand. Marin does struggle with accepting herself because of this, though. This becomes her refusal of the call. Marin doesn't want to be an eater and she doesn't fully understand it. She has a hard time listening to the tape that her father left behind her because he tells stories about her past that she just doesn't want to know that, or doesn't want to really process, I would say. She doesn't want to accept the truth that she will always be different than everyone else because it just hurts her in the long run. On her journey, Marin meets Sully, which is her mentor. I would say that Sully actually meets Marin though, because he, as an elder eater, he is able to smell her out and kind of tracks her down in order to find her. Sully is a very creepy and weird man, and especially towards Marin. However, he does teach her things about herself that she didn't know before. Sully does become a very crucial part of the film later on as he is introduced to Marin, which we will talk about later on in the presentation. But in the moment, Marin can tell that he's not really a good guy, and she kind of wants to get away from him. So, to cross the threshold, Marin accepts that she cannot go back to the life that she's lived with her father, and she knows that he's gone for good and that she must travel from state to state in order to find herself. She wants to really find her mother to understand why the way she is, the way she is. During this journey, Marin faced a lot of tests, allies, and enemies. For her tests, Marin needs to learn how to control herself and live a life without hurting others. She is tested on what it's like to feel lonely and different because when she's traveling, she's alone for majority of the beginning, even though she will eventually meet Lee. But she needs to learn what it's like to live on her own because she's had her father her whole life helping her through these struggles. For her allies, Marin meets Lee, who is also an eater. Lee is able to teach her survival skills and becomes her main partner, and they even form a emotional romantic bond with each other, which then moves into a relationship. For her enemies, Sully, who was once her mentor, now becomes her enemy because he becomes very obsessive over Marin and becomes a threat to her, not just her, but also Lee. For Marin's approach to the inmost cave, she finally learns about her past from her mother's side. She learns that her mother was also an eater and that she inherited these traits from her. She starts to lose hope in herself seeing her mother's state since her mother was practically ate herself out of her own struggle with her, I wouldn't say disease, but she just never learned how to control it. And Marin just doesn't want to turn out like that and starts to get worried that she'll never be able to live a normal life. Similar to the last slide, the ordeal that Marin faces is that her and Lee will never be able to live a normal life because of their bad eater habits. I wouldn't say bad eater habits, I guess it is bad, but she gets very emotional over this and she doesn't want to have to be different her whole life. Especially now that she's met Lee, she wants to be able to just live a normal life with him. However, though they do receive a reward, like seizing the sword at the end, the reward that Marin faces at the end is that she finally feels comfortable and accepted with someone and that person is Lee. She feels like she can connect with him so well since he is an eater and doesn't judge her for her past because he has the same past too. And with this, they are finally learning how to be able to move on in their future, especially with the road back. Marin and Lee start to live a normal life together, like I said, and they even get an apartment and start to do day-to-day things together. However, this doesn't last that long, and they are shortly interrupted by Sully. He starts to become a threat, and he plans to ruin their lives. This causes a resurrection, where Marin and Lee get into a huge fight with Sully, and they must fight for their survival. In the end, they return with the elixir. Marin is left alone with the death of Lee. Lee ends up killing Sully, but in that moment, Sully gives Lee a wound that he cannot recover from. In the final scenes, Lee is expressing his love to Marin and tells her, "Just love me and eat me." Their connection is so deep that she would eat Lee, bones and all, which earlier in the film that is expressed, if someone did that, then they are very rare and emotional for it to happen. After Lee's death, Marin is able to accept herself for who she is because of the love that she had formed for Lee. This scene is like one of my favorites in the movie. I'm now going to play it. It is very graphic, I would say, so be aware. And I think that this scene is very symbolic of Marin and Lee's love for each other, and the whole film of how it's put together. I would say like that she's eating bones and all at the end. You'll just be able to see.
We can't call an ambulance, Lee. We can't let anybody in here. We're just gonna go. Come on.
Oh, come on, Lee. I want you to eat me.
No.
I want you to eat.
I'm not gonna eat him.
No, I want you to
I don't
eat.
want to.
I want you to eat me. I want you to eat. I want you to feed.
No.
I want you to eat.
No, I don't
want you to do it, Marin.
I can't stop.
Get down here.
No.
I want you to do it, Marin.
Lee, stop. No.
Bones
No,
and
I
all.
can't. Stop.
Beautiful.
No, stop. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out.
Just eat, sweetheart. Love.
No.
Just love me and eat.
I think you always had a feeling like you knew it all along. I kept believing I was never meant to be. Maybe I just had it wrong. In a world that isn't ours, in a place we shouldn't be, for a minute, just a minute, we made it feel like home. For a minute, just a minute, you made it feel.
So, for the commentary, overall, this film has been one of my favorites since I've watched it. Like I said in the beginning, especially since it's my two favorite genres put together, horror and romance. I think that the way that the director was able to interpret it together, it was just beautiful. I am glad that I was able to get into a deeper dive of the film because it has given me new ways to interpret it, and rewatching it again and focusing on different details I wouldn't have before. I would totally recommend this film to everyone interested in horror or romance, although it can be very graphic and make people feel a little bit uncomfortable with certain scenes. I just want to say thank you so much for watching my presentation, and